So why don't we just take a moment to finish up the Vicarious Visions Spiderman trilogy, shall we? Spider-Man, Mysterios Menace, a humble Game Boy Advance title released in 2001 on these dates across the world. Published by Activision once more, Mysterios Menace is a platforming action game, once again starring, who else, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Upon booting the game, you're immediately hit with some comic panels for an intro, showing off the game's various villains and some action shots of Spider-Man suiting up and getting ready to deal with them, before you are promptly dumped into the game's main menu. New game, password, and sound. Such options, much wow. Let's just start the game. Sadly though, I must report the lack of a kids mode in this title. A devastating blow to game journalists everywhere. Thankfully, I can actually play this game halfway competent, so I can handle that just fine. Mysterious Menace begins with a phone conversation between Mary Jane and Peter Parker. You see, dearest viewers, Mary Jane wants some fish from a carnival game and needs Peter to pick up a fishbowl for her, to which Peter agrees. Yeah, that's what we're going with here. Honestly, I don't even think that's too out of character for this series so far. Thankfully though, instead of just being a shopping trip for the whole game, something exciting happens instead. Trouble in New York City. There's rampant criminal activity going about, in particular at 3 certain locations. Pier 54, the Empire Metals Foundry, and downtown. Peter promptly lets MJ know that something's come up, but he needs to split, but MJ reminds him, don't forget the damn fishbowl, Peter. Peter makes a quick change into his spandex, and it's time to hit the streets and figure out what's going on. From here, the game proper starts. Instead of being 100% linear, Mysterious Menace gives you a choice as to what levels you play and in what order as well. So let's head up downtown and start cleaning up the street trash. Obviously, since this is a Game Boy game, Mysterious Menace is now 2D and looks, alright, I guess. It's a Game Boy Advance game, so I would never be too brutal on the graphics for that reason alone. I will say, though, that in spite of going from PS1 to the Game Boy Advance, as well as switching those aforementioned dimensions, Spider-Man is just as capable and mobile as he used to be. He's pretty quick on the ground, his swings are fast, and have really good momentum on them, and he can stick to every surface in the game with no issues. All you have to do, typically, is just crouch. Your rub cartridges return, and with them abilities fairly similar to the ones you had on PlayStation 1. Instead of needing a few seconds to fully whip a target though, Spider-Man now simply has a web ball that instantly ties up foes, making it way more useful. Impact webbing returns too, same as it always has. You also have the web shield, though Spider-Man just holds it in front of himself instead of forming a protective dome this time. It also makes enemies completely freeze in terror for some reason. Combat-wise, Spidey still has a decent arsenal of attacks. Simple forehead combo, jumping kick, dive kick, uppercut, and even stronger dive kick that requires you to spring off a ceiling in order to execute it. Just make sure you have somewhere to land, of course. Your most effective maneuver in combat, however, is the most devastating any fighter could hope to have.
I'm gonna sweep the leg. You got a problem with that?
A sweep of the leg. I jest, but really it's got great range, hard knockdown, and certain enemies don't even know what to do when you're crouching. Seriously, look at these dumbass muscle men. I'm concealed from their sight by their massive pecs. Later on, though, the slightly smarter muscle men have a stomp, which prevents you from abusing this tactic.
Step on this dumb motherfucker!
Your Spidey sense can also come into play since it lets you know when an attack is coming from off-screen, which obviously super useful. Overall, this honestly controls pretty well, though some later platforming segments, won't lie, are a bit frustrating to deal with. Back to the game proper though, you beat your way through the downtown area of New York, brawling with the aforementioned muscle men and pinstripe-suited gangsters and Tommy guns. The funniest things about enemies in this game is they all use the exact same generic death scream. Stock scream number 3, I'm pretty sure. You reach the end of the downtown area and throw hands with your first boss, Hammerhead, making a return from Enter Electro. I guess he's already out of prison? Hammerhead has a gun, can summon cronies with a simple whistle, and his charging attack comes back too, but in this game he's very vulnerable, just getting webballed to death. After beating him down, HH sicks a bunch of goons on Spider-Man and sprints off to a nearby nightclub where he immediately takes hostages and holds the club down entirely. So of course, Spidey heads inside, continuing clobbering gangsters, and now doing battle with these extermination squad-looking goons, and you're tasked, of course, with rescuing 5 hostages as well, before you can move on to the boss area. Thankfully, the hostages can't get greased in this game like in Enter Electro, so you just have to deal with the task of navigating this giant nightclub to find them. Actually, I can't lie, I'm kind of shocked at how big some of these levels are. Most feature multiple areas, with some even having secret locations that give you various useful items, like web cartridges, health, and straight up power-ups to Spider-Man. So you're encouraged to do more than just blast through the levels as fast as you possibly can. unlike me, who tried his best to blast through the levels as fast as he possibly could. Since I mentioned them, Mysterios Menace features similar drops to the PS1 game, except enemies now do drop these items as well. In addition to the ones I brought up earlier, spider armor makes a return, of course, being another life bar to help keep you alive through the horde of enemies you have to face. You also have various suits that make you immune to damage types like fire and electricity too. All very useful, of course. Returning to the nightclub, you face off again with Hammerhead, and after you beat him down once more, Spider-Man demands answers as to what he's up to. Hammerhead informs Spidey that he was simply doing a contract job and is left webbed up for the cops to pick up later. Spidey sniffs around the place a bit and finds some weird technological devices that are clearly too advanced for that dumbass Hammerhead. That means someone else is pulling the strings here, and the web being weaved only becomes more tangled. So, onward to the next level. Empire Metals, in my case. You beat the shit out of some poor dudes who are just doing their jobs at the foundry, and, ninja? Holy shit, why are ninjas skulking around this place exactly? The same goes for the automated plasma turrets. It's a metalworks, not Fort Knox for fuck's sake. There's also a lot of fire and big grinding gears here, which obviously hurt you. Not even sure the plasma turrets are needed with how dangerous everything is around here. Anyway, at the end here, you face off with, whoever this is. Big Cogman? Wheelie Big Cheese? I don't know. He's also very vulnerable to Web Ball, until I ran out at least and had to finish him with my bare fists. Spidey asks the obvious question here. I mean, who the fuck is this guy? Oh, Big Wheel. That's who you are, of course. Big Wheel says he was paid to just distract Spider-Man while other people are draining the power cells at Chemcore, which will cause a meltdown if allowed to happen. So Spider-Man jets off to Chemcore to stop these bastards. And by God, this level sucks. I kinda wanna just let them cause the meltdown. Why? Well, you see the side quest for this area is to smash these control panels to disable the laser walls that are preventing you from advancing. These panels are scattered all over the place, and you remember how I mentioned earlier that the levels are really big? Well, that's a huge detriment to this particular mission. There's also a good bit of instant death traps sprinkled throughout these levels, so one wrong jump or a miscalculation and you're dead instantly. Death traps, which these are made even more annoying since a lot of enemy placements here complicate everything, and trust me, I can't imagine anything more embarrassing than being a superhero and getting taken down by some random thug. Also, these thugs are just super aggressive for some reason. They're literally leaping at me to make sure I die. What worker is this dedicated? I mean, really? The boss here in Chemcore is Electro, downgraded from main baddie to just a normal sub-baddie. Learning some simple pattern play later, Electro gets beaten down. Electro angrily lets Spider-Man know that he's stolen enough energy to power up the towers, and then he subsequently explodes. Spider-Man investigates the towers mentioned by Electro and ponders if it has anything to do with the equipment he found earlier, before heading back to the map of NYC for the last main level, Pier 54. Very dangerous area for Spider-Man, since much like your average spider, he cannot swim and will die if he ever falls into the water, which is a constant threat here due to, once again, inconvenient enemy placements. To address it really quick, you get 3 lives in total at the start of your game. If you lose all 3, all that happens is that you're kicked to a defeat screen with the famous Spider-Man quote, and a password is essentially how your game progress is tracked. You do have to entirely restart the level if you die, and that's about the most inconvenient part of dying in Mysterios Menace. It's really not that big of a deal if you end up failing. The boss in the pier area is Rhino, who is a lot more vulnerable to a simple ass-kicking this time out, thankfully, and he goes down just as easily as the other bosses in this game so far. In the wake of the fight, Rhino almost drowns, and Spider-Man ends up pulling his big dumb ass out of the drink. Rhino comes to, partially an amnesiac for some reason, and he lets Spider-Man know that he was just here to cause trouble, and to keep him and the cops occupied while some crates were shipped to a nearby museum. So of course it's off to the museum, where Spider-Man is immediately greeted by ninja, who are currently attempting to steal artifacts, so he needs to stop them, obviously. So at the museum there will be 5 yellow ninja who you have to dispatch and retrieve the rare artifacts from. This level is actually pretty well laid out. I actually ran straight into every ninja pretty easily, so yeah, even though it seems like it'd be a super annoying segment, it sucks way less than Chemcore. After you beat down the last ninja, Spider-Man interrogates one of the masked villains, who kindly lets him know that Scorpion is in the building and is causing a ruckus currently. So you head off to bring the insectoid villain down. Good old Matt Gargan hops around like a methed up rabbit for some reason. He can beat you up, shock you with his tail, and on top of that can cause glass to fall constantly with some wild tail whipping, but overall not really that difficult a boss once you learn the patterns. Though Scorpion does make things a tad more complicated when he collapses the entire lighting system of the museum onto the floor below, rendering the entire bottom floor an electrified no man's land. Beat down and tied up, Gargan of course spills the beans that he was meant to set up the tech shipped to the museum in exchange for finally being freed from that damn Scorpion suit. Spidey investigates further and realizes all the previous incidents actually are connected. shocker there. It seems though the tech was meant to power a variety of illusion-generating machines, but thankfully Spider-Man's interference stopped them all. Except one, which immediately begins causing all sorts of havoc around town. I wonder how a bus turning into a T-Rex works. Anyway, Spider-Man whips up a tracking device and hunts down the location of the final device, and you thusly unlock the final level of the game. The amusement park. I wonder what type of enemies are located here. So you beat up the clowns as you traverse a mangled roller coaster before heading up into a busted funhouse to fight.
Who's there? A skeleton.
Red skeleton!
Yeah, skeletons. Before you ask, yes, they do make the same noise on death as the normal thugs. This place is fucked. And not even just for the animate bones either. This amusement park is actually full of pretty challenging platforming with a near constant stream of enemies to deal with. I mean, look at this. That's like 10 skeletons all standing on top of each other. Very menacing. But if you survive all the platforming and clowns, you come across the final boss, which is, of course, Mysterio. And man, is this fight quite a challenging one. Mysterio has a few strong attacks and actually changes up his patterns quite a bit. Not to mention he could take quite the absurd amount of punishment for being, you know, Mysterio. You're not Rhino, bud. Why aren't you dying right now? He also constantly flicks between the other previous bosses in the game to attack, and has a super vicious earthquake stomp too. I can't lie, I struggled pretty hard here since there was a lot to learn, but I did it. Took me a shit ton of tries, but I did it. But you know, after I'd beaten the game, I realized something. Apparently, I missed out on every upgrade for Spider-Man that you can pick up in the game's various levels. Upgrades which are informed to you via this little message right here. All of which are pretty damn useful, of course. There's stuff that give you more web cartridges, make your impact web do a hard knockdown, more efficient web cartridges so you use less per ability use, and more importantly, stuff like the symbiote suit which constantly regenerates both your health and webbing. So out of curiosity, I went back and collected all the aforementioned items to see if it'd make things a bit easier. And by go back and collect them, I mean I entered this password which just gave them all to me for free. And yeah, duh, it's way easier when you're smacked up to the gills, taking less damage and regenerating yourself constantly. Shocker, right? So you clobber Mysterio, and just before Spider-Man can finish him off, he vanishes into nothingness, leaving behind only his clothing, which promptly fucking explodes, leaving behind only his helmet. Spidey is left exasperated by this whole ordeal. Thankfully, Mysterio's helmet makes for quite the good fishbowl, meaning that after this whole ordeal, at the least, Peter isn't in the doghouse with Mary Jane. The game ends with MJ praising Peter for remembering the fishbowl, with Peter simply remarking, "Well, Mary Jane, wouldn't believe what I had to go through to get it." And that's it. Back to the menu? Play again if you like. This ends Mysterios Menace in the Vicarious Visions Spiderman trilogy. Just stick to Mysterios Menace for but a moment. And honestly, it was a pretty solid little title. Frustrating at times, admittedly, but very fun and a pretty serviceable game overall. If I'd have played this as a kid, it would have seen regular play on my Advanced, and probably my SP too, even. To speak on the Vicarious Visions trilogy as a whole, well, honestly, let's break it down a little bit. The original Spider-Man title for PlayStation 1 still stands out as my favorite Spider-Man game of all time. True, the controls haven't aged spectacularly, admittedly, but it has some awesome characterization for its heroes, genuinely funny moments, and one hell of a voice cast to back that up too. A total all-timer for superhero video games. Enter Electro was a fine, albeit very forgettable sequel. Everything was improved all around in my opinion, but things just weren't as memorable as the first, unfortunately. And Mysterios Menace is just a solid little Game Boy title. One with a pretty funny wraparound joke. I mean a fishbowl, for fuck's sake. After Mysterios Menace, the Spider-Man video games quickly shifted to being based on the Raimi films, the first of which came out just a year after Mysterios Menace. As for Vicarious Visions, they're actually one of the game studios still fortunate enough to be around in this day and age. They're known as Blizzard Albany now. They did the remakes of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 on top of Diablo 2 Resurrected. Regardless, I think VV should have a seat at the superhero table due to their very solid and incredibly memorable Spider-Man titles. Anyway though, I must digress now and sign off. As always, dearest webheads, my name is HadesManticore, and this here channel is CityStateManticore. Thanks a ton for watching if you did. Leave a like, a comment, and of course be sure to subscribe, because as always, there's more content to come. And I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.